Good afternoon, good morning. How you doing? Where you there? Wagwan, yeah, right. You are listening to DJ LP on Passion Radio and Wagwan. It is lovely to have you here. Lovely to have your presence, and thank you so much for tuning in today. You are locked on to the best radio station in the UK. That is Passion Radio UK. Blankety blank checkbook and pen.com. You understand? All right. So I want to say you are listening to DJ LP. And yeah, man, the sun's shining, or maybe wherever you are, it might be dark. It might be early morning, it might be midday, wherever you are, whoever you are. Just thank you so much for joining me. This is the show where we talk about everything that pertains to that interesting and oh so exciting subject, dying, death, and grief. Oh, but as I've said, you are listening to LP, who's otherwise known as Laura D. Pusey on these mean streets, and I am just giving you some information. I'm giving you some knowledge. I'm giving you some wisdom so that you can be prepared. You know, you may not be listening today, you may be listening any other time, but when you hear, you will get all that you need, I guarantee. And you know, when that time comes, call me now. Call me, let's do this together. All right, okay. So the past few weeks I have been talking about yes, dying, death, and grief. And this week is no different. Last week I was talking about the decolonization, the necessary decolonization of death. This week, we're talking about the necessary decolonization of our funerals. Nobody does it like we do. Have you ever been to a black funeral? My word, I swear, they're better than weddings. I've never liked a wedding, but give me a good funeral when everybody's dressed up and the men are in nice suits and looking firm and fine. Okay, sorry. I get a bit carried away sometimes. Yeah, funerals. You know, the other day, I had a video out that I put on TikTok. You can follow me on TikTok under Dipism, and yeah, somebody had said to me, "Why are you laughing?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not really." Yeah, if you watch the whole thing, then you'll find out why. I'm just a happy person, and I think that if you can find the joy, if you can find the beauty, if you can find the blessings and the gifts in this subject, then you're on to a winner. So basically, what I intend to do is just help you to see that there is a different side to death that is sorely mistaken. We are working with narratives that we did not create. You know, if you go to any one of our funerals, you will see that they are celebrations of life. We are a people who inherently and in our DNA recognize that, you know, there's no such thing as death. There is the moving on, there is the leveling up, there is a new world, a new existence, a new beginning, a new chapter, a new existence, and indeed a new way of communication with our loved ones once they have laid their bodies aside. So let's get into today's subject, which is about decolonizing death, our funerals, decolonizing our funerals, because, you know, we're really held back, and our funerals have changed so much over the years because we are being hemmed in and narrowed down and guided, or maybe, you know, herded, I think would probably be the better word. We've been herded into boxes that we just don't fit in, you know. So that is why I encourage us to have our own businesses within the funeral sphere, within the funeral field, within the funeral industry, whatever you want to call it, the funeral space. Let's fill it up, because it doesn't make sense that we are not presiding over our own funerals. It don't make sense. How can we be giving our bodies to people who don't look like us? Simple things. you know? So if you know of anybody who wants to start a new business, who wants to start a new career, who wants to generate generational wealth for the next generations to come, so that we've got something to hand down, something actually, ironically, that never dies, then let's start talking about our business within the funeral industry. Let's do this, okay? Some weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, I attended an academic conference that was discussing the colonization of the death space. All right. So this is something that is being widely discussed in academic spaces, because there is a understanding that there are severe areas that are being, what's the word am I looking for? Ignored, yes, sidelined. And it has been the case all the time. It's like everybody is now just kind of realizing that, you know what, we've done them black people dirty, you know. But at the same time, they can't do anything about it, really and truly. For all their talking, for all their discussing, for all their well-meaning, this actually is something that only we can address, because we know ourselves. Okay. So continuing that conversation that I had last week, which was talking about how our health is colonized and how our death is colonized, I'm now going to discuss that funeral, the whole funeral atmosphere, and how we have been just, you know, as I said, herded into directions and boxes and spaces that we just do not fit in. Okay. Let's get the bit that horrifies me out of the way first. Okay. It's the actual funeral. And no, as I've said, you know, I do enjoy a good funeral, especially when you see how everybody's turned out and everybody just kind of falls into line. We all know what's expected of us when someone we love dies. Now, I think in weeks to come, I'm going to be talking more about our behavior, though, because we're slipping, but maybe we're slipping because it's time for new ways to come on board. Yeah, maybe it's time for us to find new rituals and new traditions and new ways to celebrate those that we love. You know, the academic, though, the social, the British perspective or definition of the funeral, though, takes precedence. And I believe that it determines the way that our bodies are viewed and subsequently treated. Okay, so please listen to my words and listen to me good. I'm only going to say this once, but you'll probably be able to catch it again. Because I am recording on Zoom. I just edit out the music and then I fling it on Facebook and I fling it on YouTube. And sometimes I put it on not Instagram, on LinkedIn. Okay, you can find me on Facebook under Elpusey, ELLEPUSEY. You can find me on LinkedIn under Laura D. Pusey, because that's my road name, you understand? And you can find me on TikTok under Dippism, and you can find me on Instagram under Dippism too. Okay, so coming back to what I'm saying about the social, the academic, and the, you know, the overall perspective of death and funeral in the UK. Okay, it's a term that they use that really rankles me. It gets under my skin, but I'm just going to come out and say it. They refer to the funeral as a means of disposal. It's a word that just, I don't like it, you know. They refer to the funeral as the way of disposing of the body. A quick Google search of the meaning of the word disposal explains it as being an action or a process of getting rid of something. You dispose of something, you get rid of it. So when we look up alternative words for that word disposal, we get words like scrapping, discarding, dumping, ditching, and chucking. Can you see? Can you see where I'm going with this? Like, if the dominant perspective is, comes down to just merely disposal, look at the person next to you. Just look at the person next to you or somebody that you really care deeply about. Can you imagine scrapping or ditching or chucking or dumping them because their consciousness has left the body? It's not really what we do. It's not what we do. We would like for our loved ones' bodies to be respected and be treated in the utmost care, with the utmost respect, because the body is what we see. We don't see the person's consciousness. Yes, it shines through the personality, but oftentimes the first thing that we notice about a body is the way it looks and the way it feels in comparison to ours and those around us. We're attracted to people's essence. We look at the smile and we're like, yeah, I like that. Or sometimes we look at the face and we say, boy, it's sour-y. But we see similarities and we see the differences and we see the features and the behaviors of the person that are made manifest through the body. And that is the thing that kind of attracts us and draws us and, initiates love. That initial love, that you see that then turns into something deeper, something meaningful as that personality kind of emerges more and more. So the thought of getting rid of this beautiful body once it no longer contains the animated spirit kind of irks me. It's like the thought of kind of, stubbing out a cigarette butt or flinging a can of Coke out the car window as you're driving. Not that I do that. I don't do that. But once you flung it out, like there's no more thought of it. It's disregarded. It's discarded. It's gone. You've gotten rid of it. So when we come to, thoughts about our loved ones, we have memories. And it's through our memories that we filter our grief. So, we want our last memories of our loved ones to be of a high energy. It just makes sense to me. When it comes to grief and that, I'm going to talk about that in detail next week, about how our grief is colonized, how our grief is discarded. Okay. But today we're talking about funerals. So, yeah, as I've said, funerals are the official way of chucking the body of your precious loved one away, as is seen in the eyes of the dominant people within the industry. Okay. It's a view that's widely held by those that are doing the work. So let me just ask you one question. If they struggle to respect us now, and it's well documented that, we are subjected to institutional racism and yada, 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 right? Imagine what they think of the dead Black body. Okay. There was a time when the body was not even, our bodies were not even viewed as human, right? It was traded as livestock, cattle, less than human, with zero intelligence, which has somehow justified their actions ever since. It's justified the way that they've treated us, the beatings, the rape, the abuse, the poor living conditions, the breeding and the breaking and the killing. It's well documented that the Black body was experimented on routinely and seen not to feel pain and able to endure high levels of torture to varying degrees for the pleasure and the advancement of those who didn't look like us. So where I'd say this is where superiority and inferiority really took root. You know, it took root in difference, in the fact that they're different to us, they're lower than us, yeah, and it flourished as those who assumed ownership over their flock enjoyed the fruits of their evil, and unfortunately continue to do so until we do something about it. Okay, let's just make one thing clear, all right? I'm not saying that there's no respect that's given to our bodies today when they are in sort of white funeral parlors. You know, there's respect there, there's treatment there, okay? But to be honest, I don't know what goes on in them because I don't go behind the scenes. I don't go behind the doors. So who knows what's going on? I know that there are sanitation rules that are often adhered to, but we also hear in the news from time to time about rogue funeral directors. Yeah. And they come in all shapes and colors and forms and sizes. We hear about them in the news, and, you know, it causes a big hoo ha, and we expect more, and we shake our heads. There's no one really to complain to, but no laws are broken, so nothing comes of it. There's no punishment that's ever dished out, and really there's no incentive to do any better, just to not get caught. So as I've said, no laws are broken, okay, because this is the most ungoverned industry. Hear what I'm saying? Listen to me good. There are no laws. You don't need any qualifications, and you don't have to pass any standardized tests to become a funeral director. Why, I hear you say, oh my gosh, LP's dropping bombs. It's facts, okay? Traditionally, this was a family business. It was learned, it was taught, and it was passed down through the generations. It's as simple as that. The funeral industry is a great example of the accumulation of generational wealth because it stayed within the family. And my brothers and sisters, my friends, whoever you are, we're playing catch up and we're a bit slow to this one. You know, I think that maybe out of all the different industries where we are quite visible, we're not visible when it comes to funerals, the black funerals, and any funerals. I'm just saying, start funeral directorship, start your business, but we're not there. We're not visible. We can be professionals in this industry, and we can serve all communities, but not if we're not there. And so I get a lot of people who kind of complain to me and say, you know, they did this and they did that and they did this and they said that, and they, oh, that was a bit harsh. But we're not there. So if we're not there en masse, then, you know, how can we expect anything else? This is why I advocate for us starting our own funeral homes. It's necessary for the community, it's necessary for our families, and it's necessary for us as individuals. Okay? It's well documented that those of African, Caribbean, Black, British, and diaspora communities are not respected. Okay? Especially in the eyes of the dominant races. The body is simply disposed of. Yeah, it's chucked away and it's discarded. But, you know, we have our standards, we have our needs, we have our cultures, we have our traditions. And, you know, there are ways that we need to be doing things. I could soften my words, but if I did so, would you really hear what I'm saying, though? You know, the truth is unchanging. So however it comes to you is how it comes. How you take that information is up to you, because I can only put it out there. I can only encourage you. I can only urge you to think about this. I find that sometimes it's actually only when somebody we love dies that we do start to think about this. And fortunately, we are seeing more and more of our brothers and sisters coming into this industry. Even this weekend, I heard about a new company that's opened in Peckham. So, we've got funeral directors springing up, and also we already have Serenity Gardens that sorry, the House of Serenity, not Serenity Gardens. um we have the House of Serenity that operates in Peckham as well. That's in South London. But whereabouts are you? I've got a funeral that's coming up in June, and that's in Northamptonshire. Do we have any black funerals directors? No, we don't. We have a funeral director. We have one black funeral director in Northamptonshire, but she works for a chain of directors. So it's not an independent funeral directors. And when I asked her, is there a celebrant? Is there somebody else who can do the funeral in Northamptonshire who is of African and Caribbean heritage? No, we don't. So I'm doing that funeral, and it will be a pleasure to do that funeral. But we need our brothers and sisters to step forward up and down the country, because we are dotted all over the place. Okay, we need more representation. And we need to be aware of the way that we are handling our bodies following the death. So let's talk a little bit about history, okay? History of the industry. I'm going to go back, but I'm only going back as far as the UK. So I'm not going to go back to Egypt, okay? Maybe in a future show we can discuss that, and I will have more information for you. But let's just talk about the more recent, ancient. I wonder if you can use the word ancient with England, because when we actually look at the timeline, um, England is actually a recent country. It's a recent place. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about, the UK. All right. So back in the day, the UK was one who worked with wood. So it makes sense, isn't it, that it would be the carpenters who were the ones that made the coffins, and they became the undertakers. And if they had a horse and cart, then they would also provide the transportation to the church, because funerals were conducted in the churches. And as I said last week, back in those days, people were dying at home, or they were taken home upon death. Okay. And death midwives would labor with the dying person and their family. And then they would wash and prep the body. And it was really a community thing. People would then go and say their goodbyes, or they would view the body at home. And then the undertaker would come with the coffin and take the deceased to the church. That's how it used to go. And in time, it became the remit of the funeral director. So the undertaker became the funeral director, and the funeral director would wash and dress and prep the body. Okay. And as the profession progressed, the funeral director or undertaker took on more and more roles. Okay. And this was predominantly the sphere of the man. Okay. Back in the day, there were two spheres. So there was the woman's sphere and there was the man's sphere. So in the women's sphere, she tended to the house and the kids, and she kept everything going: cooking, washing, cleaning, ironing, them things there. And the male sphere was to provide. So he would go out to work and he would earn a living and he would bring the money home. Okay. So it makes sense then that the woodworker, the carpenter was within the male sphere. Maybe the woman's sphere included the end of life work. Maybe she would wash and prep. I don't know. I can't remember being there back in those days, but it was very much taken over by men, and to the point where We nowadays we don't even really talk about death midwives. We don't know about we don't know about death midwives who were later labeled death doulas. Okay, so that's where the term death doula comes from. But as a side note, I don't use the word death doula. Okay, I was trained to be a death doula, but I found that the training was not appropriate for me because my cultural needs were not considered. And as the word doula means slave in Greek, I prefer to refer to myself as a death care practitioner. So not only do I fulfill the role of a death midwife, I also arrange funerals, I conduct funeral services, and I support people with their grief following a bereavement. Okay. And as I've said in like the last 2 or so weeks, the bereavement is the loss of a relationship. Okay. So the person that you love doesn't even have to have died, they might just have left you. Or you may have lost, I don't know, anything, your house, your health, your home, your career, maybe somebody's dumped you, they've walked out of your life, maybe your friendship has come to an end. We grieve, we feel this because we are men having a experience on earth. That's what we've come to do. We've come to have an experience in these bodies that we reside in. Okay, going back, let's go back, because as you know by now, I do tend to kind of go off on little tangents, but more and more so, I'm kind of bringing myself back and I'm reining it in and I'm focusing. Okay. So, yeah, as a side note, back in the day, there were things such as grave robbing. That was a real thing. Not only would people rob graves for materials such as jewelry and clothes, they would also rob the grave of body parts, and at times even whole bodies, for medical experimentation. I mean, think of it, yeah? How have we gotten this advancement in medical, treatment? They had to work on somebody, right? And when they weren't working on us, they were working on the body. Okay. In America, moving swiftly on because I want to keep it upright and, higher vibration. In America, okay, maybe this isn't higher vibration, but let's keep going, yeah? In America, they were segregated, and, blacks and whites were not able to be together as they are now. And that extended to the deaf space. Okay, so the white people didn't want to have anything to do with the black bodies. They didn't want to handle a dead black body. Furthermore, the body was not even allowed to be buried within white cemeteries. Okay, and it isn't such a bad thing, because when you look at the American industry, when it comes to death and funerals, they're doing all right. They're holding their own. And it's because they've got that foundation, they've got that base, and it was created from the fact that they had no choice. Coming back to the UK, I can't find any history of how black bodies have been sort of handled or viewed, even though it's well documented that there were black people in the UK well before we jumped off the Empire Windrush and took up residence here. Okay, so we had the Moors, and we had people that fought wars as well. And yeah, before we were invited by Churchill to the UK to clean up this country, we were here already. In fact, there's no place on earth that we haven't been, you know. I was speaking to somebody the other day, or did I see it? I don't know. It all merges into one. There are black Eskimos. We are all over the place. Okay. And when it comes to the wars, I know that at least one of my great-granddads fought in the Second World War. And, although he did make it back to Jamaica and he was given large, copious amounts of land, the black men were routinely put on the front line so that they would be slaughtered first. That's the reality. So as I've said before, I don't really know about how our bodies were treated. They weren't, I don't know whether they were scorned in the same way as they were in the USA, but we find today that we are not present in the funeral industry in the way that the Americans are. And so we can consider that as being colonized. Our death is colonized. Our funerals are colonized. And, even in America now, I know that there is a movement from the dominant people in that area to come at the American death industry by fronting as Black funeral directors, as fronting as Black businesses, when really they're not at all. It's, they've just got somebody in place, and that happens over here. So there are people that will, the chain funeral directors that will have a Black funeral director in place so that it looks like it's a Black business, but it's not. It's a chain. So I'm very much an advocate for independent funeral directors, because our money doesn't stay in our pockets for very long. I don't know, was it something like 5 minutes or something like that? Very, very short amounts of time. So when it comes to the UK funeral industry, it was quickly realized that Black people took death very seriously, and that there was a lot of money to be made from Black communities. Back in the day, we typically buried, and we'd spend a lot on our funerals. Things have changed significantly, I think, and drastically since COVID. And, we have seen that we've been hit with having to do things differently. When COVID was at its height, there were many of our sort of traditional ways of modes of operandi, our traditional ways of practice that had to just be kind of put by the wayside, not just for us, also for, Asians and, people from other backgrounds. Traditions and rituals weren't allowed to be followed because there was a fear. We didn't know what this COVID thing was, and so we didn't know how we could interact with the body. But when it came to, prior to COVID, it was often seen as an opportunity for funeral directors to upsell to us. And this was even the case when we were sending our loved ones home, because, repatriation was cha-ching. We would have to pay for the tickets, we'd have to pay for the storage, we'd have to pay for everything to be, done so that the body could be safely sent over and then received on the other side. And I was speaking to one of our darling funeral directors recently, and he was saying, yeah. And then they would make sure that they sent one or two funeral directors over, sitting first class on the plane. There was no real need for the funeral directors to go, but hey, it's a free holiday. Recently, though, it's been kind of brought to the surface, I think, that there was a lot of upselling and there was a lot of abuse going on with regards to the way that people were being treated at the time of a funeral, when it comes to sort of paying up for the funeral. And a lot of fees, hidden fees, would be added to the end total. So the standards agency, called the Competitions and Markets Authority, they laid out rules for funeral directors to follow so that their fees were clearly defined on the windows of funeral parlours, so that their potential clients knew in advance what they can expect to pay. So that's good news. There's been a lot now that's been done to just sort of make sure that things are simpler for the client, for the customer, and so that there is a level of respect that is given to everybody. Okay, but whilst we're talking about competition, because that's basically what they were doing, they were competing against each other. I don't know whether it was like reverse competition. Let's see how much money we can get out of this one. I don't know. But when it comes to competition, I find that I'm often quite baffled about the way that we work as a whole. Let's talk first of all, as a people. There's no need for us to be competing against each other. I really just don't understand competition. I don't understand jealousy, because there's enough for all of us. There's enough of everything for us all. When it comes to the funeral industry, when it comes to death, the ultimate truth is that one day everyone is going to die. So there will always be enough work for everybody, always. And we're not just looking at our communities, we're looking at everybody's communities. Everybody needs to be served because death is universal. We're all unique, like the great scholar Errol Dunkley once said, every man does his thing a little way different. So we all bring something to the table. You can't work the way that I do because you're not Laura extraordinaire. I can't work how you do because I'm not as great as you. I'm not as wonderful as you. I don't have the skills and abilities that you have. I've got my own skills and abilities. We're all different. We all do our thing differently. So maybe, if we were to come together, it would instill more confidence in our people within our community, and maybe inspire other people to come and work with us as well, because we're professional. I mean, we've been dying longer than anybody else on this earth. So why are we not doing this work? Death is very important to us, and everybody has the right to choose where they go and who they go to. If people rather go to funeral directors outside the community, then that's fine. That's fine. But let's make sure that they've got choice within the community so that they don't have to go outside. As with all services and institutions, we don't have our own. And so when we don't have our own, we are subject to the whims and the rules and the standards of others. So our death, our funerals, and our grief is still very much colonized. Okay, let's talk about the role of the funeral director. Okay, the role of the funeral director is to work for the client. The client is the person who's paying the money. Okay, so if Winston is paying for the money, yeah, Auntie Susu can't come along and say, well, they have to do this, they have to do that, they have to do this, they have to do that, especially if it's Winston who's paying for the funeral. The funeral director can't listen to Auntie Susu. He has to go back to, or yeah, she or he has to go back to Winston because Winston is paying. Okay. And it's the family. It's Winston's word that goes. It's not the other way round. Okay. So if you want something for your funeral director is duty bound to ensure that they provide it. Okay. They will charge you for it, but they also have to provide it. Okay. Unfortunately, though, we don't always know what can be done and what can't be done. I would assert that there's nothing that can't be done. I mean, be reasonable, be reasonable, but we actually have the power. Okay. And it's sad because we don't know, because of our ignorance. I speak to so many people who say, well, we were told that we can't view mum or dad, that we can't wash her or him or dress her or him and prepare them and do their hair. And the sad thing is that most funeral directors don't know how to attend to our hair or our skin so that our loved ones are presentable. They may insist that the coffin is closed by suggesting that natural processes have advanced too much for you to be able to see your loved one. But I've watched and I've been guided by professionals within the industry who have miraculously, I like that word, miraculously restored appearances of our loved ones, okay, using everyday items, using creams and cosmetics and makeup that works wonders. But because of that ignorance from the dominant cultures who don't know and don't care to know, oftentimes we're told that we can't view and that, you know, it's too late and that natural processes have taken place. Sometimes that is the case, and I will explain why in other shows yet to come. But sometimes it really is as superficial as the fact that they didn't know how to do the hair, or that, you know, they don't know how to apply makeup in a way that makes our loved ones look better. And preventing our access to our loved ones is down to ignorance. Okay, so what I would urge you to do is seek advice from people like myself and people who are obviously listed within the FACFO directory. If you are unsure of anything, if you have any questions to ask, okay, ask us, reach out, because we are there. That's why I created FACFO in the first place. So FACFO is the Federation of African and Caribbean Funeral Operatives. And yeah, we are there. We're there for you. We are there to ensure that your needs are met at that time. The directory is free. You are free to join the directory if you do any work within the areas of dying, death, and grief. We need you. We need to know who you are. We need to know where you are. You are very important to us. You're very dear to us. And you know what I was saying before about the fact that when somebody we know dies, we just fall into place because we know what to do. The chances are you could be a funeral operative and not even realize that that's what you're doing. Okay, you could be literally cooking. Yeah, you could be the DJ. You could be the person who creates orders of services for people that you know and love. You could be one of these people who just automatically assists the family, guides the family, stands with them, and acts as their voice when they are unable to communicate. That might be the kind of thing that you naturally do. When I was doing my research for my dissertation, and my dissertation was on the mantle of the strong Black woman in times of adversity. You can find it. It was turned into a journal. It's there online. The ladies that I spoke to, they explained that, you know, gosh, I've completely lost my thread. When I was talking to them about different aspects of the funeral, they were talking about it being a performance, you know, it's all hands on deck. And oftentimes within our families, there's a hierarchy. So you know that this one does that and that one does that. This one's good at organizing. This one is the spokesman of the family. This is the stronger one. So she's the one who's kind of pushed out there in front, and we take our lead from her. Oftentimes it's the eldest. Sometimes I've been speaking with women who they're the only girl in the family and they've got big brothers, but because they were the girl, it fell on them. you know, to do the work. Or Mum said that I had to make sure that I turn the other cheek when the guys, the brothers, are kind of out of line, and I have to make sure that I'm the peacekeeper. And that's really kind of where my dissertation came from. It's those expectations that we have on our family members in times of distress. But we are coming to the top of the hour, so I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to play you out with Apparently Nothing by the Young Disciples. Please join me in the second hour and we will continue this conversation. Good day to you. That's what I'm going to say. Good day. You are listening to DJ LP on Passion Radio. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate the fact that you have taken time out of your day to listen to me wittering on about topics that, you know, we may not really want to be talking about, but they are important, they matter, and we need to be discussing them. In truth, we are late to the conversation. We are late. We are playing catch up. And yeah, I've just had the opportunity to listen to some messages that were left for me by one of our really dedicated listeners who goes by the name of Mr. Bojangles. And he has said, you know, that, yeah, we're playing catch up. He agrees with what I'm saying. And he is located in Slough. And he has said that in the area of Slough, it is well known that the churches have three different prices. Okay, listen to what I'm saying and listen good, all right, because he's talking truth. Yeah, the churches have three different prices. Okay, the European funerals are the cheapest. Those of Asian backgrounds are next. And yeah, I suppose so, because they don't really use the church. Maybe that's my ignorance, but I would assert that there are some Asian backgrounds that just don't need, they have no need for the church, especially when they've got an imam and they've got a mosque. The most expensive funerals then are those that are conducted within the church for African and Caribbean parishioners, for members of the African and Caribbean communities. Those funerals are more expensive. Okay. All right, so let's be fair. Let's look at this, okay? Because our funerals do tend to be big. They tend to be quite massive. So there's a lot of people there, but you know, we're not there causing trouble. We're there to remember our lost loved one. So it's not as if we need to be kind of treated in any way. You know, it's not as if we need to be policed. Okay, so our funerals tend to go on for a little while. But come on now, how can you cram a lifetime into such a small amount of time? I say that because really and truly, even though we do, I managed to do it as a funeral celebrant. You know, the standard time tends to be about 40 minutes, but a white funeral will take, you know, 20, it can be done in a good 20 minutes. And so, all right, let's go into this, because as a funeral celebrant, right, if you're given a half an hour slot, then we're talking 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. That's 10 minutes gone already. And then you've got 20 minutes to talk about the whole lifetime of this person that you loved for your whole life. Their funeral is reduced down to 20 minutes. So the same is the said for a double slot, which is a 50-minute service. Okay. And again, 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out, you've got 40 minutes to talk about the life of your loved one. So yeah, when there's so many people coming and going, it's no wonder that our funerals are going to run over. And when you consider our lives, the quality of our lives, and the amount of love that is expressed during the funeral, the fact that we are wounded, we have lost one of our own. How can you say, all right, an hour tops? It's never, you know, it seldom happens. Maybe that's the reason why we are charged more. Maybe that justifies the reason for charging us more. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, there are scales, there are pay scales, and we, as those that to traditionally bury, we as those that like to do our services and really remember and see off our loved ones, we, we are charged more. They see us coming and they rub their hands together. They see us coming before we see ourselves. We don't even know. And as Mr. Bojangles has said, we are late to the game because we've not been interested. That's what Mr. Bojangles said. He says we've not been interested in doing anything for ourselves. And so we're not there. We're not present. We're not present. So now we're sprinting. Now we're playing catch up. And now we're hoping that, we can make changes because we're feeling the rough end of the funeral industry when they say, no, you can't see your loved one, or, oh, flip neck, you're going to do backfilling. Well, that's going to take time. Well, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up and fill it in. During COVID, we weren't allowed to backfill. The casket was in the ground. There was no risk of any form of infection. And yet many of our brothers and sisters were refused the right to backfill. And why do we backfill? That's a tradition of ours. It's very important, and it does have a spiritual origin. It is to ensure that our loved one will be kept safe. As I said before, back in the day, there were grave robbers. I'm not saying that anybody's going down there now. Don't think that the people in the UK have the strength to actually go and dig up a grave. But what I'm saying is, number one, we don't know what happens. And number two, our loved ones, we have to do the backfilling. Our loved ones are met by their ancestors. And okay, all right, we're going to go there. For me, I'm sitting here. You are sitting wherever you are. Any person, no matter how old you are, who you are, what color you are, I don't care. Over the past 400 years of your life, you are carrying upwards of 4,096 different people. These are your ancestors over 400 years. We go back to millennia. So our ancestors are present when we are burying. This is a very spiritual thing, and we don't know. So we're standing around these graves and we're having our drink, we're drinking our spirit, we're keeping ourselves warm, and we're trying to be as merry as we can, knowing that we're never going to see our loved one again. But it's not just us that's in attendance. Our ancestors are there as well, because our loved one has been met by their family on the other side, who are equally rejoicing, just as Edison explained, when a newborn is brought into this world, we rejoice over the fact that that baby has come in and joined the family. Similar rejoicing takes place on the other side. Our funerals are really important to us. And I do shudder and I do cringe when I think of the amount of funerals that we have had, even in like my 40-something years of being alive. All that money that we have given to funeral directors because we have presumed and assumed that the right things are happening, that respect is being given, that they are respecting us, and not standing there thinking, flipping heck, when's this going to be over? How much longer is this going to take? Oh gosh, they're going to do this now. Oh, it's a long one, Oh gosh, we just need to be doing this ourselves. We really do. And yes, as Mr. Bojangles said, we're playing catch up. It was a marathon and we're expecting to win it by sprinting. But, we've got to do something. We're trying. That's all that we can do. Just keep trying. Let's just keep going. We're never too late to join. We're never too late to do something for ourselves. Okay? So in the first hour, I was talking about, how our funerals are colonized and how we are often sort of dictated to at that time. And yeah, it's become common practice. I don't think we realize the extent to which we are studied by people from other cultures. We are studied, we are watched, and we are observed because this is about survival. Everybody is trying to survive. It's as simple as that. So if I can survive by taking money off you, of course, I'm going to study what I need to do. I'm going to study how to schmooze you and how to get the money out of your purse with a smile on my face at this time when you are so very vulnerable. I might even give you a cup of tea and pat you on your knee and say, there, I completely understand. And the thing is, when it comes to us, we're such a loyal bunch. So often we will go to Mr. Blah blah down the road. I could name names. I could name the name of the one funeral director in Croydon that everybody goes to, the one funeral director in Huddersfield that everyone goes to, the one in Manchester that everybody predominantly goes to. And if I was to ask questions of people of other areas, they would be like, oh yes, we take our loved ones to Mr. Blah 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 because he done my mum, he done my gran, he done my granddad, he done my aunt, he done my sister, he done my brother, he done my son, he done my daughter, he does the whole family. Yes, of course. And every time he sees you, he will welcome you with open arms because his children will go off to university and make something of their lives, because they will be able to buy that new car and that new motorhome. Yeah, they'll be able to pay off their mortgage and they'll be able to buy a new house so that they can house their children and their loved ones, and then maybe even rent one out to you. This is an example of generational wealth accumulation. And this is what we really do need to be thinking about with regards to our loved ones who live and our loved ones who follow us. Okay, let me tell you something. The funeral industry is in trouble. And the reason why it's in trouble is because the children don't want to do the work. It used to be handed down through the generations, and people are no longer interested in staying in the family business. It's all right that it's raised them and that it's gotten them to a good place in life, but now they want to go off. They do want to go to university. They do want to see what the world has to offer. And so what's happened is you've got bigger chains now who have swooped in to take the lion's share of the business, and they have brought out those family companies. So you'll go to, I don't know, Jack and Sons, let's say, but Jack and Sons is actually now owned by a corporation. It's not an independent funeral director anymore. As I've said, I'm a big fan of and an advocate of independent funeral directors. That doesn't mean that I won't work with anybody else, but I'm just saying, we need to have our own. It's as simple as that. And another thing, let me just explain to you. If you do decide to go with Jack and Sons, that's fine. That's fine. Have no problem with that, especially if there isn't an African or Caribbean funeral director in your area. Fine. But I heard a story about a family recently who um, gave their son, brother, he was a father, he was a loved one. They gave his body to a Caucasian funeral director who refused to do his hair. And he was a man who used to like his hair in cane rows because he had beautiful hair, like, whatever. I don't know. Maybe he was a hot boy. I don't know. Sweet man, you know. But the family wanted for his hair to be freshly cane rowed. But he's with a white funeral director. And do you know what they did? They phoned quite a few of our black funeral directors and said, will you be able to go over there and cane row his hair? Oh, what a BC. And they tried quite a few times, and they tried quite a few different funeral directors and said, the body is here. Can you go and cane row his hair for us? No. Can you come and bring the body to us? Because at the end of the day, you know, how sometimes the expectations that we put on our brothers and sisters who are providing a service are just downright unreasonable. And I'm not talking about just the funeral industry here. I'm talking about every aspect of the work that we're doing. But because I know the funeral industry, I can speak so passionately about it. One of our sisters out there is a funeral director, and she gives discounts. She does as much as she can for the family. You know, this is what she does because she's so passionate. I think she works at a loss just to make sure that our loved ones are looked after and that they are given the send off that they deserve, only then to find out that they've paid thousands on this or thousands on that. And they've been able to because they've cut corners or they've whittled her down because she is of African and Caribbean heritage. We really do need to think about how we are treating our loved ones and how we are treating our brothers and sisters who are providing us with a service. It's no joke. And I apologize sincerely if you think that my words are too harsh, but God damn. Sometimes we just need to say it as it is. We all know what it's like. We know what we're like. We know what we like. Okay, so knowing what we are like, I want you to just cast your mind back in the days, you know, when we were burying, when we were coming together as families, when we were working together. Okay, Mr. Bojangles has sent me another message, but I'm on the show now, so I can't listen to your message to relay it to our audience. Unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have the wires plugged in so that I can actually bring you live. But actually, what I will do is ensure that you can. And anybody who wants to comment on anything that I'm saying, if you would like to actually have a conversation with me that can be broadcast over Passion, you know, so, and that can be recorded so that we can continue this conversation, please do feel free to contact me. My name is Laura D. Pusey. Google me. You can find me on Facebook under L Pusey, ELLE, DJ LP, Pusey. That's PUSEY, one S, yeah, EY. Okay. But as I was saying, going, you know, back in the day, Mr. Bojangles. Okay. Yeah, okay, thank you for messaging. It is called a lack of respect. Yes, it is blatantly. And, you know, as long as we don't respect ourselves and our one another, we are going to be holding ourselves back. It's as simple as that. In fact, I had a conversation with somebody this morning who was saying the same thing. It's about time that we stop blaming other people from other cultures from holding us back, because they're not. Their job is done. We are doing it to ourselves. We are perpetuating hate and fear, and that is stopping us from moving forward as a people. It has to be said. I am not going to edit this and put it on Zoom because this is the way it is, you know, or edit it and put it on Facebook and YouTube. It's the way it is. We know who we are. Going back to what I was saying. Back in the day, it was common for us to bring our loved one home the night before the funeral. This was natural practice. This was normal practice. When did it stop? Why did it stop? You know, we would have our loved ones back home with us the night before their funeral, and everybody would come to the house, and the casket would be open. It'd be an open coffin, and we'd be able to see our loved one that one last time. I remember going to funerals of family members, and that was standard practice. And I remember the very first funeral that I ever went to. And I think that I was 6, but it's probably not my first funeral, but I think I was 6. But when I do the maths, it turns out I was a little bit older. But I remember my dad saying, Laura, you never did see cousin. And so I was like, huh? He picked me up and he held me on top of, he held me above cousin, yeah, so that we were face to face and looking at each other, although his eyes were closed, but I was looking at him like face to face. And yeah, I just remember the women in the family saying, Peter, put her down, Peter, what do you think you're doing? But even that, you know, that even was a tradition that we had, because what we would do is we would pass the children over the open coffin, you know, because that was a ritual that we used to perform and it had meaning. I'm not going to give the meaning here and now because our practices need to stay within our communities. Our knowledge and our wisdom needs to stay within us, within our circles. But if we're not there and if we don't know, then, you know, what who are we? We are not what nature intended. We're far removed from who we were. And because there was this notion of not talking your business and, you know, keeping your mouth shut and keeping yourself to yourself, a lot of those rituals and traditions, a lot of our knowledge and wisdom has been lost. It's been lost, you know. I remember once I was going to a funeral and somebody gave me some black bags and said, there you go, put those on your feet. Why? Because we don't bring the soil home with us. Especially look at the raining. It's been raining. You don't bring the soil from the cemetery back and it will be on your shoes. So you clean your shoes when you've come out the cemetery. There are so many things that we don't know and we don't practice. And there are other stuff that we're supposed to do when we come out of the cemetery, because that is a place, a dwelling place for spirit. Yeah. So we really do have to be thinking seriously about what we're doing and how we are conducting ourselves. When did we stop bringing our loved one home the night before the funeral, and why? Is it because we're scared of Duppy in the house? Really? And where has that come from? Where has that notion come from? Because as I've said before, there was a time when we used to celebrate the elevation of our loved ones who have laid their body aside via the route of death, the route that we have come to know as death. Yeah? Who pumped the fear into us? Let's think about it. Okay, we used to celebrate, we still celebrate life. We call it a homegoing celebration of life. So where did the fear come from? Because inherently, we don't actually believe in death. We believe that the energy, the soul, the spirit of the person goes on to a new existence. If we didn't believe that, then we wouldn't be believing in Duppy and all this and ghosts and all the rest of it and being haunted. So there's obviously something more to this. And if there is something more to this, then what are we doing to appease those spirits that have left so that they don't come back and trouble us? I remember when my dad passed away, my stepmom was talking about how she now has to wear red knickers so that she doesn't get terrorized. I don't know. She's a yardie, she's Jamaican. But what I'm saying is that there are so many things that we simply do not know. There are rules, you know, there are rules to life that we follow, and there are rules to death that we need to follow. Okay, Mr. Bojangles has responded, and he has said that it's a man-made construct and it's been constructed by our white brethren. And let's stop and think about that. Why would they have put that fear into us? They would have put that fear into us because they didn't know about us. Voice note, Bojangles, I can't listen. I want to go back to the Haitian Revolution. Yeah. The reason why Obia and voodoo was banned was because we used our African spirituality to fight back, to protect ourselves, and to do what was necessary to ensure that our lives could keep going. Voodoo and Obia and African spirituality in general was demonized by those white people who were seeking to control us. Not because it was bad. It wasn't bad for us. It was bad for them because it was powerful, because we knew what we were doing. So, as I've said, we need to really drop this fear that we have of ghosts and duppies and all this kind of stuff. And we need to question where it's coming from. Where is it coming from? It's not ours. And what we have done is we have assimilated, which means that we have taken on fears and, fears and scare tactics, and we've internalized them thinking that they're ours, and they're not ours. They're not ours. What is important then is for us to be coming together and talking about this. We need to talk about our origins. We don't need to be further demonizing them. We need to be asking about them. If you're scared of something, you will continue to stay scared of it until you stand up and face it, until you look it in the eye and say, actually, what are you about? Where are you coming from? What's this all about? Because until then, you're just going to live in fear. You're going to live in ignorance. And what we have found is that fear and ignorance has led to self-hatred because we don't know who we are. My intention was never to berate or to belittle or to chastise or to rant. But the truth of the matter is we need to be talking now. We need to be talking and discovering ourselves and who we are and the importance of our greatness. Because if we were so bad and wicked, if we were so awful, as is dictated by the general consensus towards African and Caribbean people, why do they insist on focusing on us? Why is it that they insist on wanting to research us? Why do they want to be like us? Why is it that they're constantly on our backs? There must be something special about us. We must be so wonderfully made. It's as simple as that. We must be special. We must be wonderful. Our inner beauty shines. But we are kept, or maybe we keep ourselves back in a state that keeps us from progressing. Because when we look at ourselves, we don't necessarily see the beauty of us. Maybe that's then why we discard our bodies. Maybe. What we need to be doing is talking together. We need to be planning in advance. And as I speak every week of my books, My Life's Tapestry is an end-of-life guide, which is designed to help us to have those conversations with our loved ones, to learn about our loved ones, because so often I work with families and I say, tell me about mum. What were her favourite flowers? Oh, I don't know. What was your dad's favourite colour? I don't know. Oh, what schools did he go to? I've got no idea. Oh, I'm going to have to ask Auntie so-and-so. There's going to be a time when there are no Auntie so-and-sos to ask. So let's sit down with our loved ones, and you'll sit down with them and you'll say to them, come on, let's plan in advance. And they'll turn around and say, what? You want to kill me off? You want me for dead? No, I don't want you to die. I don't ever want you to die, but I want to be prepared for when that time comes, because it's going to come one day. So let's talk about it so that you are given all of the help and support that you need on the lead up to it, and so that we can respect you and honor you when that time comes. That's it. Literally. So My Life's Tapestry talks about, what schools did you go to? Who were your parents? Let's see your family tree. What rituals and traditions were you given? What or did you and your family abide by? What were those rules that your auntie so and so's used to tell you about death? What do you know about it? What does it mean to you? And then when that time comes, how would you want to go? Do you want to go in a hospital? Do you want to go into a hospice? Would you like to die at home? Do you want us to surround you? Do you want us to be playing gospel music, or can we put Lady Saw on? But it's those kind of things that we need to know in advance. Would you like us all to wear yellow at your funeral? Would you like us to sing a particular song at your funeral? How would you want us to remember you on your anniversaries? So many times I speak to people and they don't have a clue, and they hear about the work I do and they say, I could have done with you at that time. So like and share this video. It's just, we need to be planning in advance. You need to let your loved ones know. Yes, Lady Saw. You need to let your loved ones know your desires before you pass away. Okay? You'll be helping your loved ones in advance of that time when you can no longer speak for yourself. That time will come. And it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. There was a youth of about 16 in Northamptonshire who was buried on Friday because he was stabbed to death by people from a different culture. And it happens within our cultures as well. We need to be thinking about the lives of our loved ones. Okay? I feel like when I was saying that, I feel like it was like very kind of authoritative, but it's very important. And I can't impress upon you guys enough how important it is to just have the conversation. I'm not saying involve me. I'm just saying involve members of your family, because it's necessary. Okay, it's necessary. So, coming back to the topic that we're talking about, there are different types of services that you can have. Mr. Bojangles spoke about the church ceremonies, so we can have our ceremony, our services in a church, and then we go off and have the funeral, we have the burial, sorry, or the cremation. Yeah, we don't really tend to cremate, but it's becoming more and more of a reality in our communities. So there is the unattended cremation. The unattended cremation is like the cheapest form of a funeral that you can have. Okay. And an unattended cremation basically means that your loved one will be cremated and nobody will be in attendance. Okay. That's a direct cremation, unattended. And that tends to be the cheapest. The pros and cons of that: if you have an unattended cremation, then okay, they get cremated and then you get the ashes back, and then you can have a fantastic farewell wake, leaving do, celebration of life. That's not necessarily a bad idea, and there's less pressure for the family that also has to find the money for 9 night and maybe other things that are necessary for their loved one. You can have an attended cremation. So an attended cremation would take place at a crematorium, which is on the grounds, tends to be on the grounds, tends to be where the cremation will take place. You can attend, okay? And then you can have your family. And that's the one where I'm talking is like your 20-minute service or your 40-minute service. Okay. And the last, was it the last? No, it wasn't the last funeral that I did. I did a funeral in Bradford a few months ago. There wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough time. Okay. So, you know, speeches can take place at the wake, afterwards, after you guys have eaten, and maybe even just before you've had a good dance. I'm just saying, we need to be talking about this. When it comes to the actual cremation, I have actually attended a cremation. I've watched a cremation take place. This is also your right. People from the Sikh community will go and attend the cremation so that they oversee the whole process from beginning to end. You can watch, okay? I was once told the story about two daughters, two sisters who attended their dad's cremation because they wanted to make sure that it actually happened, not because they loved him, but because he had treated them so badly when they were alive. They wanted to watch it burn. Simple. Yep. You can go in and you can watch the cremation. Okay. And that information also is really good for those of us within the community who worry that they will be given somebody else's ashes. I've gone through the whole process and I've seen how carefully those ashes are treated once they have been through the different what's the word I'm looking for, industrial machinery to ensure that the job is done. You know, there's a lot that goes to it, and the people within the funeral industry, regardless of their color, regardless of their background, they work hard. This is real hard work. It's hard work, and they are to be saluted regardless of who they are. And you know, it's not work for everybody. Like, not everybody is cut out to do this, and I do think that it's a calling. And I do think that more and more of our brothers and sisters are hearing the calling upon the death of a loved one, because it's then that you really realize, actually, you know what, I can do this. Or, I don't like the way that Jack and Sons handled my dad. I know that I could have done a better job. The work is there for you to do. The business is there for you. And if you would like to join, then please do. Do contact me. I've got another message here from Mr. Bojangles. He says, in my opinion, there should always be a family member overlooking. And I agree with you. There should always be a family member who just sort of sees the whole thing through to the end. As I've said, I'm an end of life guide. I'm a funeral celebrant and all that kind of stuff, but I am a death midwife. So if you want me or the person who is, you know, the celebrant to be more active, if you want a death doula or a midwife, death midwife, or a death care practitioner, which is what I call myself, to actually be there to ensure that everything goes properly and that the loved one is not left alone ever, that's your right. We can do this. We're not asking for anything out of the ordinary. Okay, it's normal, natural, and necessary. Personally, with regards to my life's tapestry, there's a question in there. Do you want somebody to be present at the cremation? And I think that every family should have a nominated person who is. I think that every family should have a nominated person who deals with that funeral and says this is what's going to happen, and everybody falls in line under that person. Conversations need to take place to ensure that everybody has a role, including our children, because so many of our adults, so many people out there are walking backwards because grandma died and she just disappeared. And nobody told us that she was going to have a funeral. We went to school as normal. We didn't even know where she had gone, you know? And that comes of the fact that people don't want to talk about death. They don't want to talk about dying. They don't want to share their grief. They don't want to look weak in front of their family members. But really, it's not a time for your ego. People can die at any age. Children, teenagers, parents, yeah, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. They don't have to be any age in particular. Death does not discriminate. It does not discriminate. And the government have schemes that you can tap into if you don't have the funds to pay for your funeral. Okay. The schemes that they have will be afforded to those who are on benefits. And there is money there that you can claim from the Children's Funeral Fund for those who pass away under the age of 18. In truth, the funeral is free. If your child dies under the age of 18, then their funeral is free. But you may have to cover fees like the order of service, or maybe extra limos, you know, or I don't know, maybe extra, like the flowers and stuff like that. You're going to have to pay for that. But when it comes to the service of the funeral director, those services are free if your loved one happens to pass away under the age of 18. Okay. So what is an order of service? Just so that you know, it's that little booklet that you've got that has your loved one's picture on the front. It has the song words and it has information about the eulogy and, you know, details maybe about your loved one's life and where the wake is going to be afterwards. There are so many questions that you may want to ask. And if you do, please feel free to contact me through Dipism or through FACFO. So that's www.dipism.com, or FACFO is www.facfo.org. Contact us through those websites. And, you know, we are ready and willing to work with you. And in the coming weeks from June, I will be interviewing people from the directory. That's those who are doing the work. So we're coming together now. We're just planning who's going to be being interviewed on what date, so that you've got the information there. Likewise, you can follow me on YouTube under Dipism. And you can find me on LinkedIn under Laura D. Pusey. You can find me on Facebook under ELLE, DJLP, PUSEY. That's DJLP Pusey. Okay. Likewise, you can contact me on 07975861089. If you want to work within the industry, contact me. If you want to get information on your loved one's funeral, if you've got a loved one who has been given a date, if you've got somebody who is close to their end of life, then contact me. Okay, let's do this together. Okay, I can help. I can give guidance and support. And if I can't do it personally, I have a whole heap of people in my phone book that can. Not everybody on the directory is listed in. No, I've got more people in my phone than are actually listed in the directory. Okay, I have more people on my phone that are doing the work than are actually currently listed in the directory. Why? What was that? Why? Because we're tardy. Because I say, can you just please fill in the form? Yeah, so that I can get your details onto the website so that the people in your community can find you that little bit quicker and easier. And I'm waiting, but it's okay because, I don't know, time. Time. Everything will happen in good time. Okay. All right. So again, time flies, doesn't it? We're coming to the top of the hour. It's been a pleasure speaking with you or ranting at you, having a go at you. I want to say thank you to Mr. Bojangles for your input in today's show. It was very valuable, very appreciated. And I want to encourage other people as well to also follow Mr. Jangles's lead, Mr. Bojangles, and contact me on 07975 861089 if you want to add any comments whilst this show is taking place. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go. What I am going to play to see us out to is brand new heavies, Dream On Dreamer, and I will see you tonight 8 till 10 playing the best in sweet reggae music. I'm in a warring mood, so I think I might start off with Buju tonight. Up ye mighty race.